there is.
live? Where
Yeah.
do you,
So
where
yeah.
what
So
city do you live in?
huh?
What city do you live in?
Uh, Buddha in Norway. It's in the
In,
northern part.
okay. Is Norway on lockdown now? Have
Yeah.
people been sent home for work? So
Yeah.
the whole nation is taking a couple of weeks off.
No, I'm working from home.
Okay, all right.
So
Well,
it's
working
not.
from home
It's not.
is almost the same thing as taking a couple of weeks off.
Not exactly. In
In
reality,
some ways,
it's
the workers are better off because now they've got at least something to think about. To where everybody that's actually laid off and have no work to do, all they do is just go nuts.
yeah. But anyway, so I have um, um pretty much because of this whole thing, uncertainty. I have had some pretty major low episodes
Okay.
where everything seems bleak and impossible and such. So and there comes this practice opportunity.
Okay, what do you think about the other people who are in Norway, both those who work from home and those who have no choice about it? Do you think they're experiencing lows also?
These days, yeah, of course.
Yes, okay. So nothing
I
special here.
I know a lot of people being anxious about the whole thing. Uh, I can only speak for myself, of course.
Well, you and I have talked about anxiety before.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that you've given you've found an opportunity to really explore your anxiety.
Well, it's been more than just anxiety, I would say.
All right. What else have you found in that muck?
Well, um, hard to really put into words, but it's kind of some despair because there's so many things working against me, so to speak.
Including your despair
Yeah.
and your anxiety.
and
Okay.
and this is where where I have learned something. Because you spoke, I think it was last time, about uh, making some kind of filter in your practice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when I notice a thought that I don't need, I meant I
Can throw it out, filter it out. That's a good way of saying it, filtering it out.
yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of teaching my mind to filter out certain categories of thoughts.
Very good. Excellent. I give that regular advice, but very few of the students come and report back. Actually, I'm practicing that. I am really beginning to filter things out. So, if you have, let us say, um, an anxiety that's worth discussion, bigger than usual, and you have that coupled with despair, and you're talking about the fact that now you're beginning to control the thoughts and throwing thoughts out. Here's a question for you. How much despair would you have if you had no control over your mind? You might be
Wow.
even suicidal and don't know it.
It's hard to say.
Right. But what I'm getting to the point of is that congratulate yourself that you are in fact beginning to control the mind, and that the depths of despair and or anxiety that basically everybody in your country and is going quite around the world now, this is the common theme for everybody. And then in fact, um, Guru Viking, do you remember that interview that I did with him? We did just another one yesterday.
Yeah, I saw it, but haven't had time
Already?
to see it.
Okay, you haven't
I
seen it
just
yet. You just know that it's out there. Okay. So this is basically, um, I should give you sort of the lesson that we didn't have time to give in that Dhamma talk. But we can review it in the sense that you've got several weeks off. Enjoy it. That's the first thing. The second thing is to make sure that you're safe from the coronavirus. And one of the ways you can do that is by being in seclusion. So now that you've got that there, that means that whatever anxiety or despair that comes up, it's not directly related to fears of the coronavirus because you've already taken all the precautions that you need to take in order to feel comfortable about that. So in this regard, what I'm saying is that we use the frontal cortex, we use the wise part, we figure out what the coronavirus is, and then we make sure that we're doing the precautions that are advised. And to now we've got it. Now, if it required this, and if you were in fact surrounded by people who had it, then maybe a hazmat or a coronavirus version of a beekeeper suit may be what you need in order to be safe. But whatever it is that you need to be safe, get yourself physically safe first. That's very, very good advice, whether it's from a lawyer or a Buddha. Doesn't matter. That's just good advice. Get yourself safe. But once you've gotten yourself safe, now we've got reasons to actually try to investigate what all of this other stuff is, because that other stuff, what I mean by anxiety and despair, are not caused by the coronavirus, because you've got that already figured out. You've got that wired.
yeah
Basically, what
to
we're saying is that the coronavirus triggered something inside of you that is not the coronavirus itself, but it is deeper. That despair that you're talking about was already there, like a sleeping dog. And the coronavirus came waltzing through your mind and tripped over that dog, and now that dog of despair is upon you.
yes. Do you want to hear my the strategy that I found that seemed to work the best?
Yes, go ahead. Tell me what you're doing first.
Yeah, because first, like you say, you have um, it wasn't caused directly by the coronavirus, but as I experienced, the despair was very real, but so it had a cause. Um, then I started to you told me last time to keep practicing the daily mindfulness, be aware of thoughts, intentions, and such. Then I started to categorize thoughts into past related, uh, future related, and now related.
Excellent. Excellent. That's exactly the practice. We
And
cannot stay out of the past if we can't identify which thoughts are associated with past. So, right, the investigation, that's what you're talking about. You're investigating. Good.
yeah,
That's
so
exactly what needs to be done.
I figured most of the thoughts about the past that affected me had something to do with I had that then. I don't do it now. I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted. I don't have it now. And that caused despair. I had money on the stocks and they are almost halved. So I don't have that money.
Okay.
And about the future, I have this job now. I'm not sure if I have it then. I have my house now. I don't know if I have it then. So there's
Okay.
there's
Let me ask you this. Is it possible, under your current situation, for someone to come to your house within the next 30 days and say, get out? You can't stay here anymore. That's not likely to happen in the next 30 days, right?
No.
Okay, so you're good to go for the next 30 days. You don't have to think about it at all because they're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
coming. They're not coming. At least not now. That's the beauty of the practice, that we can tell ourselves, I don't really have to think about the stock market being down, because with it down as far as it is, even in Norway, but boy, it's really fallen off a cliff in the U.S. But everybody that I know, including Willie, is not worried about it because he knows there's only now one direction for it to go. But it's not going to go that direction right away. It's got to stay in the gutter for a while because the effects of the coronavirus hasn't felt its way through society yet. But
no,
when people begin to feel good again, they're going to express it in the stock market. Okay. So that's not going to happen for the next month or so anyway. And so look at your stock prices a month from now and then decide to feel bad if you don't like it. You don't have to feel bad right now.
no. That's true because every every thought about the future is something that hasn't happened and
Has
may
not
not happen.
may not happen. And in many cases probably won't.
So however I yeah so however I see it, it isn't caused by something real. Every feeling I have about something in the future is caused by myself because it doesn't exist yet.
Right. And so the
Um,
feelings that you have, we could say, one, that they're in the moment manufactured, but two, there is an underlying raw product base or a
yeah,
parts inventory that we keep stored in the mind so that when an order comes in, okay, coronavirus, file anxiety, then all of the little pieces you need to build anxiety, it pops right into place and out comes the product anxiety. So
yeah,
the anxiety, when it happens, it's here in the moment, but the roots of it is that parts list or that inventory of old memories, old habits, and old ways of doing things. In that regard, I would say that at your place right now, being able to control your mind the way that you can, you've probably in your lifetime felt worse than you do now. This is not
yeah,
the worst that
probably.
you've ever felt.
It's hard to say because my sensitivity for my emotions now are higher than they have ever been before. So I
Well, you can
could,
factor that in and say, well, of course, of course, I've had worse times than I have now. You're almost to the top of the world right now. You're almost on top of your own pile of dirt. And so you're not
almost.
buried under it anymore. I mean, you could have just worried yourself sick, like almost everyone's doing. They get so worried that they feel bad, and now they got to go to the doctor or to the hospital, which is probably the most likely place you're going to catch the coronavirus.
Or hoarding toilet paper.
I don't understand that one. You've got me. Maybe it's only certain brands, like the ones
Yeah,
that the bear used in the woods, soft enough for a bear. Or maybe it's Charmin, huggably soft. I don't know. But I have heard that in fact that's almost like a universal worldwide joke right now of where did all the tissue go? Almost a song, where has all the tissue gone? Gone for the virus, everyone. And where's that tissue now? Well, it's sitting in the closet. Closet after closet full of tissue we didn't need. Um, yes, people do that because that's the easiest or best thing that they can think of doing to alleviate how bad they feel in this anguish, this anxiety that is basically fear based. Now, I would go so far as to say that despair has a different property to it, just like that you're mentioning. And that despair comes with the concept that there's no way out.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it comes from, or that is, it was first mentioned within the Christian context of the dark night of the soul, or real despair, is when the saint or the preacher or the monk is calling on Jesus, and he does so fervently for year after year, and then it finally dawns on him that Jesus is not going to answer my prayer. And that starts the dark night of the soul that leads into the despair, because they've got the delusion that if Jesus is not going to help me, then I'm lost. But your despair is not so bad as that, because you can come to the point of saying, yeah, but I'll get over it. I don't need Jesus to get me out of the despair. I could do that on my own.
Yeah, I did. I did an experiment with that when I had a particularly bad moment. I took some time to go sit, meditate. Then I tried to turn my attention to this particular emotion that feels so despairish, if you understand. There is one particular emotion that feels like this is the despair. Then I tried being aware of what influences it, what thoughts is it caused by. And then as I picked up thoughts, I let them go and filter them out, like you you said to do. And
Precisely.
then when there was no more thoughts, the feeling disappeared. So the whole...
Wait a minute. Say that again.
Yeah, so when there was no more thoughts feeding it, the feeling disappeared.
When you started having more normal thoughts, in other words, if you have thoughts of despair, you begin to feel despair. And if you feel despair, you begin to have thoughts of despair. Is that correct? But
Yeah.
while you're feeling despair, you have thoughts of uplifting. And somehow or another, now the feeling of despair is not so heavy as it was.
Yeah, and then suddenly it's
Okay,
just
that's
poof.
the whole practice of anapanasati. You've nailed it.
Okay.
Okay, so now all we have to do is to remember and catch it early, when, or even before we go into despair, so that we can avoid it altogether. Or if we get into a state of despair, recognize it quickly. I mean, why waste our time in that state? Because eventually you're going to come out of it, and all you have to do is wake up to it and recognize this thought feeling system is going on, and you can break that up. Now, there's something else that you can do. You've only worked on one side of the coin. Let's work on the other side now.
The
Okay.
joy.
Well, actually, the despair feeling itself. Where is it? What is it? What is the feeling? How is it affecting the body? How is it affecting the body? We already see how it's affecting the mind. But let's get a load of it. Let's find out what it is. The same thing with anxiety. You might, in fact, find that they're somewhat related.
Yeah, that sounds true.
Right. That both of them could be present in the body, because the chemical mix that's necessary to cause both of those feelings is now present. Because the reptilian mind, the part of the mind, the self-preservation instinct that gets freaked out by the thoughts that you're having, it starts up both, is like, uh-oh, Things are really bad right now. It's time for the self-preservation instinct to bring out all of the semaphores, all the flags, blow all the whistles, shoot all the rifles in the air. It's time to get his attention. Okay, things are dangerous right now. This is, in fact, what the original self-preservation instinct's job was, so as to protect us from real danger. Now
Yeah,
it's not real danger, it's imaginary danger.
but it
It's
feels just as real
yes,
in
but you
the
also,
moment of.
in the moment of the feeling, it doesn't matter which danger it is, real or imaginary. Danger is danger, and our response to danger is always fear-based, which is actually the source of anxiety. But despair has a different kind of fear to it because it's also the fear of being trapped. It's like the difference between, let us say you're out cave exploring and you walk into a cave, and all of a sudden some steel door trap falls behind you, and now you're trapped in the cave. Anxiety for sure. But
Yeah,
after you completely search that cave and find out there are no other openings except that door that has been closed to me, now that's despair. When we come to the point that there's no way out.
yeah. My biggest takeaway from that experience was, at the moment of the despair, I have this feeling of nothing can be better. There is no way out. Just like you say, being trapped into the cave.
Hmm?
But afterwards, when I just noticed it disappearing from one moment to the next, I saw that the distance between the despair and the feeling of freedom, lightness, is so close.
Okay. All right. You were also doing the despair by showing it that way and then putting the finger in it. And I'd like to point out to you that while this is the despair, this is Ronnie. This is the me here. It's the I.
Yeah,
Okay. I am trapped.
yeah,
I am in despair. And so that's when the full blown self is apparent at the time when the feelings are most intense. That is where the situation of needing a self-preservation instinct with all of these chemicals and everything, that's where the self is created, because it makes no I can understand and use the word organism preservation instinct, which is much more accurate, but a preservation instinct that has nothing to preserve is probably not going to die out very easily. Or it's going to die out fairly easily. Sorry about that. It is going to die out fairly easily because it's got nothing to protect. There's nothing to preserve. So now we're beginning to say, wait a minute, I am not that feeling of despair. And we draw the finger out of it intellectually by saying, okay, let's investigate the despair in the sense of investigating it from the outside of the despair rather than being in it.
yeah.
You see where I'm coming from? So now we begin to investigate, okay, where is it in the body? Is it located in a particular place? Despair is often located in one or two places, or sometimes the connection between them. One is a really deep gut feeling, all the way down to the bowels. It's a feeling of unsettledness, unbalanced, almost as if there's a hole inside. But it also could be all the way up to the throat, being a tightness in the throat, almost as if the despair comes at the time when the gazelle is being throated by either the lion or, in last night's movie's case, a vampire. But in that case, it's the despair of this is it. I'm being completely consumed or surrounded. Okay,
Yeah,
so these
I
are two
actually,
different parts of the way that it can be felt in the body. But what I'm actually doing is giving you some examples and asking you now to go find it. When the next time you find yourself in that state of despair, say, all right, time to put that Sherlock Holmes hat on and that pipe, that immersion pipe, and let's go find that source, or at least the location of that despair and that anxiety, and treat them as if they're not you,
I
because they're
did a
not.
I did a funny experiment after that experience. Pretty much to do exactly that. I wanted to create kind of a separation between me and these feelings. So I sat down before a mirror, just staring into a mirror, thinking, okay, that's me. And whatever I'm feeling is here. So there is this, the duality, say duality. I'm there, feelings here. Sat like that for quite a while. Then suddenly things started to get some kind of wonky.
Kind of what?
Wonky.
Wonky.
I
Okay.
don't have any better word for it, because
Out
some
of the
burst,
ordinary, you mean?
yeah, some burst of energy shot up in my body, and suddenly I was staring at the mirror image, and I didn't recognize this person. It was like looking at a complete stranger.
Okay.
Um,
Well, you were very lucky, because now you're looking at a handsome devil.
yeah, it wasn't too
Yeah,
bad, but
you're lucky. I can't do it with a mirror.
he was a little chubby to be honest, uh, but anyway, I did not recognize. I knew at some place that was me, but I couldn't experience that as me, and I didn't experience me as looking at someone. There was only the experience of these feelings, this energy flowing, and
But the
look and
experience.
the experience of looking, seeing.
Well, good. Well, when you had that experience, where was the anxiety? Where was the um, despair?
That didn't really exist anywhere.
Okay, so out it
There
goes.
was yeah, it was kind of like floating in a cloud of lightness or something. Very, very pleasant.
Okay, and you didn't know that you were such a handsome man. So, in that regard, basically, what never mind the details or the procedures, the outcome is that you were able to separate yourself from the despair, so that it's no longer I'm in despair. It's, oh, there is despair now. I see it. So now that you've made that connection, when you the next time that you're sitting down for meditation or whatever, because you're going to have a lot of time on your hands, and so you'll have ample opportunity for this despair to come back again. And when it does, the first thing to say is, I see you, despair, because that immediately puts it in the sense of whatever the seeing of the despair is a closer thing to being me than the despair itself. And so you draw yourself out of that despair, and now you can begin to observe it objectively. That's an important quality, because you are not the despair. You are not those feelings. And when we come to understand that, then we can practice it and become free from it. So long as we continue to think, oh, I really don't like this despair I'm in, then
Yeah.
they can't get out of it, because they can't get out of the despair because they are the despair. So in that example, taking our finger out of that donut, now we can really look at that emptiness and say, yeah, that's despair. And I can feel it here and I can feel it there. And I can also breathe into it. Take a deep breath and relax the body and let the body be free from the chemicals that I was giving life to by giving it the label despair.
Oh, it sounds like, yeah.
All right, and
A good
part of the way
task.
right, and the good thoughts would be, I can get rid of this. I'm the one in charge here. You could go so far as to say, I don't like this feeling, because we already don't like it. But we can recognize it. I don't like this feeling, and I'm going to do something about it, because I'm the one who's the boss of these feelings. I'm the emperor in this pile of dirt, not the feelings. But when we are the feeling, now we're caught. This is why we have to get the self out of it and draw out, so that we can get an outside observer's picture of it, see what it's doing to the body, and do the investigation. And the first part of the investigation is, I am not that despair. That's not me.
That seems to be the most important, I think.
Mm-hmm. Once you get to the point that this despair is not who I am, and that's part of the understanding of the aggregates. The body is not the self. Air how it itches, or whether there's a big busted leg or a big slice on the throat or whatever it is, it's still the body. And what the body is doing is not me. The feeling, not me. Anxiety and despair are not me. They're just experiences of the body when it's whoppy jawed. And it gets that way easy because it's got all the ingredients to do that on hand. So we recognize that, yeah, these feelings are, if anything, nothing but a product of old manufacturing. And so it's a mechanism, and that's all it is. And so we invest that mechanism, and we can see fairly easily how to take it apart, how to put it on hold, or how to gladden it up.
Clean out this legacy code.
Yes, that's another. I made quite a career on legacy code, so I don't know if I'm going to buy that one. Yes, even to the point of keeping old COBOL programs operating that never had the intention of being shown as a web page. But it is stuff that was just put out on a few lines of print. But now that few lines of print that the COBOL program just put out, or maybe a couple hours ago, is good to pop into a web sheet. And therefore, the bank doesn't have to write any of that old code again. So, in that regard, we may not want to replace the old code, but what we're doing instead is judiciously using it. Or another way of thinking is that, yes, the survival instinct and the instincts of our human nature have kept us alive and kept us going as a species. In fact, if the coronavirus, in fact, does not wipe out the humanity on the planet Earth, it will be for one reason and one reason only: the instinct of self-preservation, the fear that humans have. Once they hear about it, they're going to start doing the things they need to do to get out of it. But part of that fear is then again that anxiety and despair and all of that. We're going to do it the smart way. And that is, we do what we need to do to be safe, and now we can feel safe also.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel full of anxiety or despair. We could put that off. Okay, I'll use that later when I need it. It was good wake up call. Thank you, Mr. Instinct. Now take a hike, go back to sleep, or do something. We've got it. The frontal cortex is now going to take over, and we don't need that instinct. Or another way of saying it is, imagine that the dog is barking. The human looks out the window, recognizing that I understand why the dog is barking, and it's not worth barking over. A false positive, a false alarm. So now we still have a barking dog. And the way to handle the barking dog is by patting him on the head and say, down, boy. It's okay. Go back to sleep. You're all right. We've got it. We've taken care of it. And most dogs will do that. So we only need to do the same thing with our own mind.
Nice
But we have
analogy.
to recognize we are not the barking dog. The barking dog is part of the reptilian part of the brain, and I am not my feelings. That if anything I want to identify is going to be with wisdom. I am wisdom. I'm the one who sees the reality of the situation, not the one who is both creating the delusion of danger and been reacting to my own delusion. I'm not that one.
I like that, creating my delusion, then locking myself in it. But I can't really understand how people can spiral down into oblivion if you don't believe there's a way out. Of course, you're not getting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you're locked into the cave and know that there is no way out, you can't find this ladder hanging down from the roof.
Well, when people are in thoughts of despair, those are the kind of thoughts that they're having, that there's no way out. But you already know, sure, there's a way out. Humanity's going to get over this. Stock market is going to go back up. You're going to get out of this, no problem. And the next point, now that you recognize that over the long haul, there's really no problem. Now you can deal with this current present moment, that I can get myself out of this anxiety and despair right now.
Yeah.
And if it comes back, I can get out of it right now. In fact, I am not it. Once I get out of it, it's got almost no power left and easy to deal with. But when I am the despair, when I am the anxiety, then the anxiety and despair become part of that which needs to be preserved. It's me. It's crazy, the way that the human brain works. I would have designed it differently. In fact, after I die and there is a God, I'm going to have a word with him. Hey, you need a do-over on the human brain, while we're at it, mosquitoes, and then now we got this coronavirus 19.
Better hope you don't have to believe in him before dying.
I'll straighten him out whether he exists or not. We're lions here. So that's the approach, that you are not the despair. You are in charge of the despair, that people generally feel like that they are subject to their anger, that are the way that they feel a certain way and they have no choice about it. And then they make the second mistake of, and I am the anger. Well, if you are the anger, then you'd feel the way that you wanted to feel. If you were your feelings, feel the way you want to feel, but you can't. You feel the way that the feelings are feeling, and you have no control over them. Partly because you've got the delusional thought that I am my feelings. But when we come out and recognize, oh, I'm not those feelings, now I can take control over them. And that's what anapanasati, and especially one's right effort. The sati is to wake up to look at that despair. I see you. And then the right effort is part of the understanding I am not those feelings. Let's breathe into them and give the body a chance to rest. And then eventually what you can do is you can start to recognize sometimes those feelings of despair and anxiety come first, and then the thoughts that are associated with them come second. And sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the thoughts come first that will then kick off the feelings.
Yeah.
And that the way to work with that then is, because you're already at that state that you're beginning to control your feelings by, controlling the thoughts. You can see how the controlling of the thoughts and choosing what kind of thoughts you're going to allow will also help you to learn to control the feelings. A little bit more difficult, but the same process or procedure. If you can allow only wholesome thoughts into your mind, then you can also allow only wholesome feelings, because they're interrelated anyway. That you're inviting yourself to have wholesome feelings just by having wholesome thoughts. And one of the most wholesome thoughts you can have would be, I can get over this despair. I can get out of this. This is temporary. It's an old habit.
Yeah, that's I suppose the golden middle way.
Mm-hmm.
I have to balance it. That makes sense.
Okay. Well, that's great. Call me back and give a report about this, because this is something that everybody's having. You're not the only one in a state of despair. In fact, right now you're not in a state of despair, so you're ahead of the game right now.
I suppose so.
Okay. So I've got
Yes.
Pablo and now Matt waiting. It's been a busy day.
Well, it's busy times.
Joyful times too. I like it when I see the students and they show me and demonstrate that they're practicing correctly, that they're making good progress.
Well, for good teaching, of course, there will be progress.
Well, the teaching is an old teaching. It's not mine. That I picked it up from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and he picked it up from the lineage that he was in, going way back, all the way back to the Buddha. So we can thank the Buddha for this. He's the one who figured it out.
True, but
that way when I screw up, it's not my fault.
But anyway, I have this homework now.
Excellent.
So,
Okay, Ronnie. We'll see you really soon. Okay.